So I am heading to a delivery opportunity this morning, Wednesday, August 13, 2025. And it may be the only one. What is nice is that I happen to have a delivery opportunity on a Wednesday, because the previous 2 Wednesdays I've had 0 days. And I was thinking about, well, I know I've got certain responsibilities that coming up next week, like the van note and the F-150 note. And those are the last 2 big ticket items that I got to take care of. And so I'm wondering, okay, what I have to do to put myself in a position to handle those items. And I'm not behind on neither bill. I promise you, I am not behind. In fact, I'm ahead of schedule because I've been paying aggressively on both accounts, so that I give myself a little bit of leeway. That's what you're supposed to do when you have accounts. You're supposed to put yourself in a position where you give yourself some leeway. But anyway, the fact of the matter is that one of the things that you've got to deal with in delivery and transport in this particular space is that you never know when your money's going to call. As it turns out, for me, about 45 minutes ago, I happened to see the notification come up. In fact, I was on the phone with somebody, and I told them, "Hey, look, I gotta go. I gotta get ready because I happen to catch a delivery opportunity." This is the first one that I've had on a Wednesday in about 3 weeks. The previous 2 Wednesdays have been 0 days for whatever reason, and so I determined that this one was worth my while, so I scrambled to get ready. Meaning that I had to jump in the shower, rustle up some clothes, make sure that I had all my shit together, stuff that I was going to take with me. It just so happens that I happened to use the Geezer van yesterday evening on a quick, easy delivery opportunity yesterday evening, and so I had already had everything in here. So I didn't have to spend another 10 minutes or so transferring stuff from one vehicle to the other, be it the F-150 or the Geezer 16. So that's a reality. You never know when your money's going to call. You never know when the money's calling. Sure, it's good to have contracts, but contracts or a dedicated route can become like a W-2 because of the expectation of you having to be there when they say you need to be there. If you have your own clients, if you have your a direct shipper or your own clientele that you're building up, there is the potential of cancellations. And so one thing you learn when you deal with direct bookings is that sometimes what you need to do is overbook, so that if cancellations arise, then you can kind of wheel and deal and maneuver people around. But as you're starting out, you may not have that latitude, and so if a cancellation occurs, it may hurt you, it may sting for that moment, but then you're hopeful that you can come up that another opportunity may call. Here's another thing. When you're doing delivery and transport, you gotta deal with fucking traffic. And in this particular case, there appears to be some fucking road work, and this shit is happening in daytime, in morning rush hour traffic, and I'm having to get out early, and I'm not. Hey, truth be said, you do delivery and transport, you do it at any time of the day or night. That's what it amounts to. I've intonated about having done load board based opportunities while you're sleeping at nighttime. I mean, there have been numerous opportunities that I've done over the past several months in which they are early morning pickups and drop-offs, or delivery situations. And oftentimes once I've completed, I'm back home about 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning. But I've been out since, depending on when the pickup time is, since midnight, 2 a.m. But that's what you do. That's what you accept as the challenge in terms of your ability to stay in business, pay your bills, and so on and so forth. Concomitantly, along those lines, that's what concomitantly means. I've used that word a few years ago on here on the Gig Geezer channel. But along those lines, when you talk about you never know when your money's going to call, that also deals with how you get paid. A lot of us don't talk about gig apps and brokered opportunities and contracts and so on and so forth. But depending on, in fact, I've talked about this in the sense that cash flow. You do certain opportunities for cash flow. That's because of how you're being paid. One of the things that make gig apps so appealing, and what people have not really talked about, at least in my observation over the years, is the fact that with certain gig apps, you have accessibility to your money on a daily basis. That's same day, daily basis. So what happens is that over time you get used to what ends up for many folk, you get used to having access to that money on a daily basis. So you feel as if, hey man, I gotta get out of here because I got shit to take care of. And I know if I gotta take care of the light bill, well, if I go out there and do certain things, then guess what? I should be able to pay the light bill today when it's due tomorrow. So there's the attractiveness of gig apps still being able to be paid on a daily basis. But then you have gig apps in which you are able to be paid within a few days. Okay, you have gig apps that pay the next business day or within the next couple of days. But then you have some gig apps that pay 5-6 days from now, between 5 and 7 days from now. And then you have some gig apps that pay only twice a month or once every so many weeks. There was one app that was basically 3 weeks. If you did something today, it was 3 weeks from that Friday. So 3 weeks from Friday coming up. So 3 weeks from August 15 was when you would see your money on that particular gig app. Then when you do your direct bookings or your contract or your dedicated routes, well, you've got to put in place a way of ensuring that you're going to be paid when you do the work. Yesterday, I did a cash game opportunity. It just so happened the person whom I did business with yesterday is someone I have dealt with for the past 2 years, and this customer has paid me either cash on the spot upon delivery, or that this customer has transferred money to me through Zelle. Over the weekend, and here's a good point. Over the weekend, someone had approached me about a cash game opportunity, and they asked me, "What am I available to do this?" Blah blah blah, and then I responded yes. They mentioned about, well, and what is your rate, and are you able to accept payment by card or check? And I'm kind of leery about that because, well, card, I'm not set up with accepting card payments. At least at that moment, I was not set up with accepting card payments. And with checks, well, if it's someone you're dealing with for the first time, you want to make sure that money is good. You don't want that check to bounce higher than a golf ball. Okay, so then what I did was I gave them my number. I gave them my number. This motherfucker does not want me to get over. He's just gonna, he bolted both hands on he held both hands on the steering wheel and looked straight ahead and said, "Fuck you, I'm not letting you over." Okay, fine. Have it your way, motherfucker. Anyway, so this person said, "Well, no, we wanted to do check payment." Okay, so I gave, all right, I'm not even, so here's what happened. All right, the person asked me, all right, what is your rate? Do you accept card or check payment? I responded that I accept Cash App or Zelle. They said no, check payment. So I'm like, okay, if these people are really serious, I'm gonna pose another scenario to them. So I told them my rate. I explained what it was. I sent them pictures of my most recent work, which is last week Friday, in fact. And I told them, okay, I will accept card payment on Square app. I did not get a reply from those people. Now, the reason why I said Square app is because I know that if you do a card payment, Square is going to make sure that money's good. They're not going to deal with that funny shit. You rarely, at least it's been my experience with Square app, you don't have to deal with you don't have to deal with a lot of chargebacks. But the reason why I mentioned about Square app is because back in the day when I first started doing rideshare back in 2016, the rideshare apps, in fact, Mike Drop Barbecue mentioned about this. The rideshare apps, they did not have tips. They did not have tips in the apps at the time. They did not incorporate tips. And so if you got a tip from a customer, it was going to be cash, or you had a Square reader in which they could swipe the card and put in an amount that they wanted to tip you. In fact, Lyft starting out encouraged you to get a Square. In fact, they gave you a Square reader. Starting out, they gave you a Square reader with the chip reader. The Square app, the Square chip reader, so that you can attach to your phone and they swipe a card, you download the app. So that's what I did. Now, that's also a little nugget for you in terms of starting out business for yourself. If you want to invoice people, get you the Square app. Now, if you don't want to spend no money, I mean, you can do that without spending any money with the Square app, but you get what you pay for. As you become more sophisticated with your work, then you may add more features to the app. But anyway, so that's one of the issues that you deal with, how you get paid. If you don't have a factoring company, then you may deal with a net 30 situation. In fact, that was discussed with Mr. Bob Williams in my last I'm speaking. He talked about net 30 situations, how he got paid, or net 15 situation. You want to make sure that you get paid out here. And so if you're out here kind of dealing it willy-nilly and shit, you may end up doing some free work, and that's going to piss you off. So what else is another reality of delivery and transport? A lot of folks don't talk about this, but I kind of brought this up back in 2023, and I know of a couple other content creators. When you do delivery and transport, depending on what it is, if you're doing like this courier work where you're just picking up medications and documents and stuff, well, that doesn't require a lot of physical. That does not require a lot of physical effort. A lot of what I do does require physical effort. I can tell you a situation where in fact, I was talking with my fast friend Steve about this. We were talking about one particular delivery route in which even if you had a lift gate, it posed a problem at this particular location because the docks, the facility itself is an old facility. It's an older facility, and so you have a dock, and then you have a dock where you can go back up to the dock plate, but the dock plate is a little nuanced in that there's one dock plate that kind of levels down to allow you to use your pallet jack to put the freight into your van and pull it out. But then what makes it nuanced is that on top of it is a little hump, another plate that's kind of curved on top like this. And so in my situation, I happen to have a trick in that I had a piece of plywood and I put it on top and it happened to work. So that was my trick. You put the plywood on, you set up the plywood to where it kind of bridges that little hump to where you have a totally flat surface to pull your pallet jack on. But with some of the pallets that I've had to transport during this particular run, those pallets are rather heavy. I mean, it's a little bit of chore pulling some of those pallets, man. You have a pallet jack, that doesn't mean that the shit's gonna be real easy to pull. And we're talking about pallets that are easily 1,500 pounds. And so you're having to yank that pallet jack over that plywood to get it over to a flat space so that you can bring it inside. Well, not everybody is physically capable of doing that. And so if you're not able to do that, you may be in for a little more, you may be in for spending more time and more effort. What I'm getting at, there are other delivery situations where you may have to do the unloading. I have, for example, unloaded, basically a pallet of cement. Bags of cement, 50-pound bags of cement. I had like 30 of them, maybe like 40 bags of cement, and I had to unload 40, 50, 60-pound bags of cement. You know, if you have the physical capacity to do that, well, you know, it's a little bit of an exercise, a little bit of sweat that you're gonna build up, but not everybody is capable of doing that. The thing is, with delivery and transport, depending on what you're doing, you've got to take care of you. I've said that many a times. I said it from the standpoint of me being Social Security eligible, being further along chronologically, in which I realized that it's only one of me. I don't have time on my side. I'm not able to recover as I did 25, 30 years ago. So I have to be smart with what I do with this type of work. But if you're younger, you may not be thinking about this shit, but your body will tell you about this shit in due time. I promise you. As they say, keep living. You'll remember the words of the Gig Geezer on that. So if you're not taking care of yourself, even as a younger person, it will catch up with you in due time. So you've got the physical work that you got to deal with. You've got the money. You've got the unpredictability of when the money's going to come. You've got the stress of doing this type of stuff. I've talked about the stress of things, and I've talked about how the stress factor led to me spending 2 days in the hospital in the intensive care unit under observation. That's what I may not have mentioned, but I was in the intensive care unit under observation for 2 days for atrial fluttering. The atrial fluttering was a result of my body about to go tilt from blood pressure and stress. If you're not able to manage stress, this may not be the type of work. But you can say that for a lot of lines of work, but this may not be the line of work if you're not able to deal with the stress. Now, this is probably more important than anything else: money management. But the reason why I'm saying it is because, and it's not because of the recent trend of content creators it's not because of the recent trend of content creators, I guess you'd say, piling on other content creators who have fallen upon hard times, at least what they're portraying as hard times. DDK, I happen to notice one of his recent videos. DDK kind of spoke on this subject, and I'm really trying to I'm trying to skirt around it. But all I'm going to say is that you need to be smart with your money. If you say that you're in business, you got to treat this as a business. If you say that you're in business, you got to treat it as a business. And part of treating something as a business is money management, business management. Okay. The $5 word is economia. Economy. That means it's not economizing. It means management. That's what economy means, management. And a lot of folk may not have developed those skills when starting out. And unfortunately, you're going to learn one way or another. I have shared how I have worked on improving my cash flow. I have shared how I started out with a lot of overhead. You know, life, when you start out doing things like this in delivery and transport, when you say that you're in business for yourself, you may not start out in the most ideal of situations. You may not. You may not start out in the most ideal situations where you have little to no overhead, little to no debt. That is the most ideal situation to be in. But you may have family, you may have kids, you may have a spouse, you may gone through a divorce like I have. When I really got into this particular segment of the delivery and transport space, I started out, 2020, when I fired my ex tried to crush me financially by putting certain burdens on me that she should have contributed to, but she refused to contribute, and it forced me to come up with money that I had but could have used for something else. Then there are other life situations whom you involve yourself with. What ends up happening is that you hope that you're involved with someone who's an asset, but they turn out to be a liability. They turn out to be a big drain, a weight. And you've got to be smart with your relationships, because your relationships can affect your money. These are things that are not talked about, but these are realities of business, of life, of, in this case, delivery and transport space. So, I strongly recommend that, if for nothing else, if you don't know, ask. Seek wisdom. Seek good wisdom, not just any type of wisdom, because people tell you any fucking thing. And that's the problem. People tell you anything, and people go for that. People will flock to the bullshit. What I'm saying is stuff that a parent or someone whom you trust in your family or within your inner circle of people would tell you. And so I'm not going to go on and on and on. This is not a lecture. If it was a lecture, it'd be for an hour, but it's not. This is yet another Gig User segment. Hopefully what I've shared is of some help to you. If you like the content that's been provided in this segment or in any other segment, hit that subscribe button. Give my content a thumbs up. Share my content among others, and I definitely welcome your comments in the section below. And I'll say it again, if you don't like the content, you can always give it a thumbs down or unsubscribe. But be it as is made, I'm Edward Lane. May your hustle, may your grind, may your business continue.